Welcome into the PHNX D-backs live show. My name is Jesse Friedman, along with the one, the only Father Overlord, Jacob Franklin, who is here today. Unfortunately, our mayor, the one and only Derek Montilla, is a little bit under the weather this afternoon. So Jacob is here filling in. Jacob, we just watched a pretty brutal 4-game series for the Diamondbacks. All in all, the Diamondbacks lose 3 out of 4 games. They did, however, score more runs than the San Diego Padres in this series overall. Obviously, that Friday game, a 9-0 victory for the D-backs was a big one. These other 3 games, all of them losses by 2 runs, including the one today. Yu Darvish was pretty good. Wouldn't say Yu Darvish was necessarily at the top of his game, but all in all, another tough one here for the D-backs as they lose their second series of the year to the San Diego Padres.
Yeah, the name of the game is walks. Like it's one thing, like you can go out and strike out a bunch of guys, you can throw 99, whatever you want to do, but you walk guys, you're going to get burned. And that seemed to happen a lot this series. Like Merrill couldn't control himself. Drey couldn't control himself. Like they walked a bunch of guys. And it seemed like every time one of those Padres hitters drew a walk, either Matt Carpenter or Juan Soto came up to the plate and those runs scored. Like it just that you have to limit the walks.
Yeah, Matt Carpenter is, I don't know, like the second coming of Barry Bonds or something at this point. He had an unbelievable series for the San Diego Padres at the ripe old age of 37 years old. Apparently, that man can still swing it. He had like a few years with the St. Louis Cardinals where it definitely looked like his career was very much over. And then all of a sudden last year, he has like this 1,200 OPS season with the Yankees, gets hurt, but comes back this season, signed by the Padres. He had an outstanding series for sure for them. On the D-back side, Jacob, I guess the biggest story from this game today is that Drey Jameson was not great. Drey Jameson threw 43 pitches in the first inning. He held the Padres to 3 runs, so it wasn't necessarily a huge disaster on the scoreboard. But not a great start for Drey Jameson here today, only getting through that first inning. He was very much all over the place. I know that the D-backs have some concerns with him from a workload standpoint as he gets built back up into this new role as a starter. I'm assuming that factored into why the D-backs didn't want to go back to him in the second inning. But yeah, things didn't look so great today for Drey Jameson.
And this is kind of what people were worried about when it came to Drey is all of the peripherals. They look great. He throws hard. He's got a pretty wipeout secondary pitch. And it just seems like that was the one concern is he going to walk too many guys, right? Like a lot of those, when I watch a pitcher, like for instance, when Zac Gallen was walking some guys at the beginning of the year, it seemed like he was almost toying with the zone, right? Like he was walking guys on pitches that were what I would consider like quote unquote a competitive pitch, right? It's a pitch that's just on the outside of the zone. It seems like a lot of the times when Drey is walking guys, they're on what I would call non-competitive pitches. Like he's pulling his fastball or his slider doesn't even come anywhere near the zone to start to get a guy to bite. While he might have strikeout stuff, it seems like he struggles to put guys away. Like he gets ahead 0-2 or whatever, and then he just struggles to put them away.
Yeah, I mean the big thing for Drey Jameson is the slider, right? I mean that's his best pitch he's had, especially in his role as a reliever and in his first start as a starter against the Milwaukee Brewers. That slider has just been getting an absurd number of whiffs. I mean that's been an incredible strikeout pitch for him. In this game, not so much. Drey Jameson did get 4 whiffs in this one, in that one inning. 3 of them were on his sinker. 1 of them was on his 4-seam fastball. He only threw 6 sliders, and the only one that got hit was put in play. It was not a swing and a miss. So that's going to be the biggest pitch for him. And whether he's in the rotation or even if he's in the bullpen, he's just not going to be an effective pitcher without that offering, and he just didn't really have that today.
Yeah, I think he's such an important piece for this team if they want to stay competitive, right? Like they are a very competitive team. It seems like they might have just gotten through what might be the hardest stretch in the schedule for the entire year. Starting the season 12-11 against just an onslaught of Dodgers, Padres, Brewers. Like it seemed to just never stop. So I think Drey, he's got the stuff. Like I think he should remain a starter. But now that Tommy Henry got called up, it's going to be really interesting to see what this team can do for the next 2 or 3 months. Like they've got some pieces, and you have Brandon Pfaadt just sitting there in Reno, like waiting to steal somebody's rotation spot because he's ready. Like it just seems like every start he goes out there in a very hitter friendly ballpark or just a hitter friendly PCL in general and just shoves, just strikes guys out and shoves. So like I'm not
Yeah.
sure whose spot he's going to take. I'd love to see Drey stick around as a starter, but at the same time, he looked phenomenal as a reliever at times. So I don't know. You've got 3 guys in Drey, Ryan, and Tommy that you kind of have to decide, like, are these our 3 going forward, or is Brandon Pfaadt, like, is he going to take the next step? Because I just
Yeah.
have a feeling that the second Brandon Pfaadt sees the big leagues, that spot's his. Like, I'm just not sure he's going to lose that spot.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a question that's probably on a lot of people's minds after this start, right? I know people love Drey Jameson and they love what they've seen from him this season, but he did look pretty darn good in the bullpen, right? Like he was pretty darn good there. You kind of felt like you had, I don't want to say a sure thing. It was still very, very early. You'd only had a few outings, but he was a weapon for this team out of the bullpen, a weapon that it really seemed like they needed, especially as a right-hander. And I think the bullpen is maybe a little bit worse off without him, and the starting rotation hasn't necessarily suited him the best, although it's certainly still early there as well. I will say, as far as Jameson's numbers coming in goes, Jacob, I think this has maybe gone a little bit under the radar. Some of his expected stats and some of the other numbers were not great on Drey Jameson. He came in with an ERA of 2.25. But according to StatCast, his expected ERA, which factors in mostly like batted ball data, so how hard opposing hitters are hitting the ball against him, launch angles, all that stuff. His expected ERA was 5.60 coming into this start. Not good at all. His FIP was 5.61. His xFIP was 4.84. All that to say, the numbers were not necessarily in sync here. I think Drey Jameson had kind of gotten away with some stuff coming into this start. And also there's the fact that the San Diego Padres are a really good baseball team. They're just a very good baseball team. And I know the record did not bear that out coming into this series. But that almost in some ways was, kind of gave you the feeling, okay, the Padres are not going to play, 400 or 450 baseball for very long. They're a better team than that. And they did show that in some ways in this series.
Yeah, the crazy thing is you lost this series 3-1, and Fernando Tatis really was a non-factor for a majority of the series. Like he had that home run yesterday, but that home run was it seemed like a total outlier because it didn't come off the bat. Like I think you tweeted out the statistics, right? Like it was the softest hit home run in the big leagues this year, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it was the second softest. I think it was like 89.6 off the bat or something like that.
So you had some unlucky breaks like that. But you lost the series and Fernando Tatis really wasn't a big factor. So like there's some examining that needs to be done. Obviously they scored more runs. Like you said, the 9-0 game really kind of helped in that.
Yeah.
But they are a very talented team with runners in scoring position. And so it just seems like there's some reevaluation that needs to be done heading into the next couple of series. Like this team, I think, can be a very competitive team, but it's going to be really tricky early in the season because you can't just bounce guys around. Like if you want to compete, like guys can't just be bouncing around in roles. Like they have to start solidifying roles, whether it's a bullpen role, whether it's a starter role.
Yeah.
Like there are a lot of things that I started to see this series that I was like, okay, like this team's good and they can be very good, but it seems like right now they're all just not super comfortable, like coming in and out of the lineup or platooning. Like it can only last for so long.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. And I think as far as some of those roles are concerned, some of those things are still not necessarily set in stone, right? You've got Tommy Henry coming back into the rotation tomorrow. You've still got Ryan Nelson in the rotation, even though he's looked a little bit more shaky of late. So we'll have to see how some of those things materialize. I do want to touch on Tatis though. You are right. He didn't really hurt the Diamondbacks all that much in the series, despite what the crowd at Chase Field, what the crowds at Chase Field over the weekend might have led you to believe. I don't know, Jacob, if I've ever seen that many Padres fans at Chase Field, at least the Thursday game. The Thursday game, the attendance at Chase Field was only about 16,000. But that was Tatis's first game back in the big leagues in more than 560 days. And Padres fans were there. There were a number of Tatis jerseys in the stands. And I heard from a number of D-backs fans who are not all that pleased about the environment at Chase Field on Thursday, and understandably so.
Yeah, it's amazing what happens when your team all of a sudden becomes good after years of just not being good. And then there's just thousands of fans that come from the middle of nowhere. I am calling them out. Like, there are not this many Padres fans. They just kind of materialized when there was a good team. Like, it is what it is. Like, I don't know. I call a spade, right? Like, they're a bunch of bandwagoners. I don't know what to tell you. But that's one of the unfortunate things about living in Arizona is oftentimes we go to our games and there are more opposing fans than there are home fans. And I'm sure it's something that really, really bothers players, even though they might not talk about it as much as, like, say, you or I might talk about who shows up to the game. But as much as Arizona fans want to complain about who shows up to the games, like, you didn't buy a ticket, show up. Like, if you want to be upset about who was at the game, like, then go. Like, the only way to start changing the culture is to actually start going to these games. I think this team, and I feel like we've done them some unnecessary, like, we've kind of been a little bit hard on them for this series, but like, they're 12-11. They're above 500 after playing 6 series against, I think somebody said it, Nicholas in the chat. Yeah, they're over 500 after 6 series against legit playoff teams. And the Marlins, who have shown flashes of being good at times.
Yeah.
Like, this team is exciting, and I think that they'll continue to be exciting. So, like, I think it's only a matter of time before fans need to start showing up to these games. Like, get behind them now. Like, if you want them to continue to be exciting, and like, I think there is a little bit that goes into it that fans need to be showing up to these games. Like, it's a two-way street, right? Like, they can be as good as they want to be, but you got to start showing up to these games to show them support. Otherwise, they're just going to lose the juice.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I will say, I think out of our audience base, I know we have a lot of crazy people who are seemingly at the ballpark like every single night. So I don't know. I think we're kind of preaching to the choir here just a little bit on that front. But yeah, I mean, there are certainly a lot of D-backs fans who continuously get frustrated over that kind of thing. And yeah, maybe they're the ones who need to show up. I mean, no matter what D-backs fans did, though, there were still going to be a whole bunch of Padres fans in the stands making all sorts of noise over what we have to acknowledge is a player returning from suspension, right? This is not a player returning from injury this time around. This is a player returning from suspension. And Damon's about to pop off over here on this topic.
I went on Thursday and like legit standing ovations, like the guy came home from war for serving a steroid suspension. I've never seen anything like it in my life. And you best believe I was booing at the top of my lungs, trying to bring down all of those cheers for sure.
Yeah,
it's weird.
Tatis has shown that he struggles to stay on the field. Like, he just, like, for their sake, I really hope that he does stay on the field. Like, he's a super exciting player to watch. But yeah, he did not deserve this type of a homecoming, right? I mean, it wasn't even a homecoming. It felt like a homecoming because they were, more Padres fans than D-backs fans. But like, the guy wasn't playing because he cheated. He cheated. This is like, oh no, poor man. Like, he took PEDs and got suspended for it. Like, no, I'm not going to feel sorry for him. Like, that's unfortunate that it was treated that way.
Yeah, it was a little bizarre at the stadium, like the first time he comes up, and really every time he came up to bat in the series, it felt like Padres fans were cheering at the top of their lungs. D-backs fans were like trying to counter with boos, but they weren't quite loud enough. So So yeah, anyway, it was a very contentious environment at Chase Field at some points this weekend. The Padres, Jacob, it's not just, the four guys at the top of the lineup. And I know Manny Machado is not really hitting much at this point. Juan Soto had a better game today, but he still had a bit of a slow start overall. But the Padres have a lot of depth too. It's Matt Carpenter, like we talked about earlier. It's Jake Cronenworth. It's Trent Grisham, who had a good series. Ha-Seong Kim made some big plays in this series, both offensively and defensively. It's just a deep team all the way around. And it goes back to what you were saying earlier about the D-backs have had an enormously difficult schedule, right? I mean, they have played 20.
Did I lose Jesse? Hi, guys. I'm going to keep talking. The Diamondbacks have played a really, really tough schedule. Like, this team is up against it day in and day out. So it's Jesse's gone. All right, we're going to keep going with this. Hopefully we can get Jesse back. If you guys have questions, feel free to send them to me in the chat. Oh, wait, he's back.
Am I back? We're back?
Yes, we lost you for a second. I was really there on an island, so I was going to have the chat start asking me questions. But I was just about to get into the fact that they were about to play the Royals. And if this team is really what we think they are, like, you really hope that they go in and they win this series. Like, I know Tommy Henry gets his first start. Ryan's starting. So, like, there are a couple question marks at starting pitcher, but then you get a Gallen game. So, like, you really hope that you're for sure getting, one really good start out of that and hopefully a for sure win. But if after you exit this part of the schedule, like, this is where it really shows if this team is legit or not, because they played really well, and it could just be a fact that they played up to their competition. Like, you hope this team doesn't fall into a pattern where they enter this Royals series and all of a sudden they play down to the competition, they stop hitting,
the
pitching goes away. Like, that's something I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye on going forward.
Yeah, that's something that Torrey talked about yesterday. I asked Torrey about what was then a 12-10 record, now a 12-11, about the D-backs just still feeling pretty good about where they're at, even if this Padres series hasn't been great. And he said, yeah, like we were a little worried. Torrey talked about how he had friends and family who were worried about the Diamondbacks opening the season with so many games against the Dodgers and the Padres and the Brewers and all these teams we expect to be in the postseason, or at least in the mix for the postseason at the end of the year. But yeah, he said basically what you're just talking about how, as you'd expect him to say, the Kansas City Royals are still a Major League Baseball team. We still need to make sure that, we're in good position and that we're not playing down to the competition when that time comes. I do want to give a shout out to Zac Gallen before we finish off this first segment. Zac Gallen is our king snake here for this first series for this series for the Arizona Diamondbacks. Even though they only won the one game in this series, Zac Gallen, of course, was basically the reason they won that game. I know they scored 9 runs, but they could have scored 1 or 2, and the result would have been the same. Zac Gallen in that start, Jacob, 7 innings, 2 hits, no runs, 11 strikeouts in that game. I personally thought this was the best that I've ever seen Zac Gallen in a start. Just the way that he had all 4 pitches of his working. We've seen him be really effective when he only had the curveball, but maybe not the changeup, or maybe the 4-seamer or the cutter. One of them was better than the other. In this start, everything was working, and it was beautiful to watch, frankly. I mean, when Zac Gallen has all of his pitches working, I'm not sure there's anyone better in the game.
Yeah, I'm just glad we're past the days where we had to worry about the couple of spring training starts on the first 2 starts of the year, because I think we can safely say that we can throw those out, and that Zac Gallen is for sure here to stay. Like, I think everybody kind of held their breath for a second. They were like, oh, wait, hold on. Like, is he okay? And now we can probably for sure say that he's okay. Like, I don't know what else you can really say about Zac Gallen. The man is a professional, shows up to work, and just shows up and does his business. Like, I don't think he's not intimidated by anybody. And it's funny, I was talking about this the other day with somebody, I can't remember who it was, but like, when you watch his stuff, like, I don't get big strikeout vibes. Like, I just see a guy
Sure.
that likes to pound the zone, and like all of a sudden he developed this curveball and a nasty changeup, and like it just kudos to him for continuing to work on that, because like he doesn't just dominate you with overpowering fastballs like a lot of the guys nowadays can tell you that they do. Like, it seems like a
Right.
lot of the top pitchers, right, their fastballs clock in at 97, 98 or whatever it is, and they're just getting major whiff. But like, he's just your typical like locator. And it's funny because you just watch him pitch and he's so strategic with what he's doing, and it just seems like he's always one step ahead of the guy that's at the plate. And so just it's always really, really fun to watch Zac Gallen pitch.
It honestly blew my mind yesterday that, it was Zac Gallen's bobblehead night. It was a big day at the ballpark. Everyone was excited to get the bobblehead, which was commemorating Zac Gallen's 44 and a third inning scoreless streak. And it occurred to me yesterday. I was like, wow, we're really here on a day that commemorates Zac Gallen's scoreless inning streak, while he literally has an active 21 and 2/3 inning scoreless streak going right now. It's just insane. And Zac Gallen is about the biggest perfectionist that you'll find around baseball. He told us after the game on Friday that he didn't really feel great in his last two starts, even though he was absolutely outstanding, how things just haven't really clicked for him until Friday, when he said that was really the first start where it's really all kind of come together for him. I did ask Zac after that game on Friday about, was it kind of a nice extra bonus for you having this outing on the eve of your bobblehead night? You don't want to get shelled right before your bobblehead night. So here's what Zac had to say about that.
Yeah. And I wore a new belt tonight too, which is probably out of my comfort zone. It's a nice snake belt in here. If you guys want to see this. So I was like, man, I hope I don't get shelled wearing this thing out here. That'd be a joke. So yeah, it was good, with the bobblehead going. Just a little bit of relief, yeah.
You dig the snakeskin belt, Jacob? How do we feel about this?
I mean, that's what the kids nowadays would probably call drip, Jesse.
Yeah.
Wearing a snake belt for the Arizona Diamondbacks, like that's drip right there. Like I don't know what else to say about that. But Zac Gallen is actually, for anybody who doesn't know him, like he's probably one of the funniest dudes that I had ever met when I was working there in the Oregon. Like he's got that really kind of dry sense of humor. So like it's funny to watch him pitch and be this super competitive guy. And then like you talk to him off the field and he's just this kind of laid back, like has a really dry, funny sense of humor and just really is a good person, like day in and day out. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens. I tweeted it out, I think, on his start on Friday that like you and I have had this conversation a long time, like whether or not the Diamondbacks would re-sign him or ink him to a contract extension. I don't know if the price tag matters at this point. Like I feel like they need to lock him down. Like it and that might just be me, but like it's really hard to sit there and say that like, are you really going to let him walk? Like, and he's got, I don't know how much, 2 or 3 years left before
he has 2 years left after this one. Yeah.
So like, it doesn't need to be immediately, but like he needs to be here. Like that's just, if you really plan on this team contending for a long time, like he needs to be that guy.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure 100% of the people watching right now would absolutely agree with you, Jacob. I don't think there's any question about that. I think D-backs fans have been through enough pain over the years as it is, seeing some of the better players on this team go elsewhere. So yeah, I've said many times in the past that I personally am a little bit skeptical if Scott Boras and Zac Gallen, if that winds up being something that we see, but who knows? I wouldn't say it's impossible. But speaking of transactions that you need to make, you all need to go check out our friends over at Circle K, where Jacob, they have an outstanding arrangement of chips and everything you could possibly want for a road trip or even just your house. Everyone loves a well-stocked pantry, right? With all of the snack offerings that you would like. Jacob, do you have a particular favorite thing that you've enjoyed from Circle K?
Their Circle K branded chips are really good, but shout out to just like the hot flavored ones. I don't exactly know what they're supposed to mimic, but the flavor on it, if you go to Circle K, it literally just says hot. They're really tasty. But like, I think one of the best things that's happened in our office, probably simultaneously the worst for my figure, is having the Circle K snack cart, because I finish my lunch and I'm like, I could still eat something. And then I just kind of like peek out and I see the snack cart sitting there, like making sure it's not on a show or something. And then I just like, I mosey on over to the snack cart and I probably spend 2 or 3 minutes just digging through all of the goodies that they've hooked us up
There you
with.
go.
Like, Circle K has really been a phenomenal partner to us, and they have been like, everything that I've had is just enjoyable. Like, I didn't, until they started providing us with stuff, I didn't know they sell their own branded things. Like most gas stations that you walk into, they're selling like, you know, like Cheetos or whatever it is. Like that,
Sure.
they've got their own line of stuff, which is awesome, and they're all really, really tasty.
Yeah, I mean, this is the tall white guys iteration of the PHNX D-backs show, Jacob. So you know, we're tall and skinny, so we are happy to be rating the snacks as much as possible. So you won't find anything better than what our friends have to offer over at Circle K. Make sure you're not missing out on all of this great stuff. Head over to circlek.com/store-locator to find Circle K's near you. I have a tradition of filling up with gas after doing shows on certain days of the week, because Circle K also has pretty much the lowest gas prices that you'll find in downtown Phoenix. That's an extra perk. Also, once you're good on the snacks, if you want something you can really sink your teeth into, head over to Four Peaks, where they have, of course, the legendary chicken tendies that we talk about all the time. And I guess they have beer, and you know, people are all about that as well. Be sure to follow them over on social at Four Peaks Brew to get all the latest on Arizona's premier craft brewery. They have NFL draft beer specials as well, including a $3 Redbird Lager pint, $5 Redbird Lager pitchers, and then the usual PHNX specials of the $3 Kilt Lifter and Wow pints as well. Extraordinary deals that they have going on over there. And of course, the best place to take in the NFL draft on April 27th, just 4 days away, is at Four Peaks 8th Street Pub. You can register for free in the link in our show notes to take advantage of all of these beer specials. Of course, must be 21 years or older to enjoy it responsibly.
I will be there. So anybody who wants to come see me, I will be at the Four Peaks draft party. It will be probably the best time of your life. So you should probably show up.
Yeah, there will be a line out the door just to shake your hand, Jacob, I'm sure. So now everyone will come.
I'm a big deal, Jesse. I don't know if you know that. I'm a big deal.
Oh gosh. All right, let's get into some of the other games of this series. Obviously the D-backs dropped the finale here 7-5 to the Padres. There were a couple of other 2-run losses here as well. The first game of the series, the D-backs lost 7-5. That one you could, I guess, fault Nick Ahmed, who made a costly error at one point in the game that made a 5-5 game, 7-5. The D-backs were unable to get anything going against the Padres bullpen from that point forward. And then game 3 yesterday, sort of a similar game where the D-backs out-hit the Padres. But as you mentioned earlier, the walks really played a factor. The Padres come away with a 5-3 win. If we take a look at our numbers for this series overall, you can see here, not a huge difference. D-backs scored more runs. As we mentioned earlier, the D-backs had 22 runs on 39 hits in the series. The Padres had 19 runs on 23 hits. It's pretty crazy considering those numbers to be talking about a series that the Padres won 3 out of 4 games. Anything stand out to you here, Jacob, outside of those numbers at the top?
The fact that people don't need to worry about this team. Like, you look at these numbers and like they might have lost the series 3-1, but I would say that you probably outplayed them. Like, it just... Sometimes it doesn't roll your way. Those 2-run losses were hard. Like, ending a game against Josh Hader is just really no way to make a living. Like, you're probably going to lose any game that you might have stayed competitive in. It seems like and I watched almost all of the innings of this series. Like, I watched all 4 games, but I think I watched a good amount of each game. And I would say that, like, this Arizona Diamondbacks team, like, I think they can compete with just about anybody. I think there was a tweet this weekend that was, I think you guys called them the answer backs, and I think that's perfect because we're
not the first ones to call them the answer backs. I think that's been used for a couple of weeks now, but it is pretty fitting given how, I mean, it literally feels like every time the opposing team scores a run, the D-backs do. And they might not win the game, but they do generally give some sort of effort and make the game closer.
Which is a step forward, right? Like you watched this team last year, and just about any time that they would get down big or whatever, like they would just kind of keel over. It was it. Like as soon as they were down, they weren't going to score runs. Their pitching was going to give up more runs. It was really hard to stay, excited when the bullpen was as bad as it was last year. Because anytime you even had a lead, the bullpen would seem to blow your lead. Like there was nothing they could really do last year. The bullpen seems to have been a little bit better this year. Like it seems like you can rely on a few of the pieces out of that. They need to start working on being the first to strike. Like it's great to be a team that's resilient and get down early or whatever. And like you're never afraid to come back. But like I'd like to, in the next 6 games, see them take that first lead of the game against the Royals and the Rockies. Like that, these are teams that you should be beating. So like get out ahead. Make your starting pitcher feel a little bit more comfortable. Like the starting pitching ERA was a little bit higher than you probably would have liked to see in this series. And that included a 7-inning gem from Zac Gallen.
Yeah.
Like that's not great. And so if you can get out to a lead and you can make your starting pitcher feel a little bit more comfortable, that's kind of what you're hoping for. Like this team is good. They just need to kind of believe in that and continue down this path.
Yeah, it's what Ryan just said in the chat, right? Which is classic Toryism, downhill baseball. It does feel like even though the D-backs are 12-11 against some very, very good teams, they haven't had a whole lot of games where, you're up 5-1 after 3 innings and it's just kind of smooth sailing the rest of the way. I think people have had fun with how much they've come back and their resilience and everything that they've shown just from an emotional standpoint over these first 23 games. But there is something to be said for, kind of a stress-free loss or a stress-free win every now and then, where games are just not quite as chaotic as some of the ones we've seen the D-backs play. If we go back to the numbers one more time, I do think it's also interesting that the D-backs bullpen ERA was substantially better than the Padres in this series, 2.65 compared to 6.91. What it really comes down to at the end of the day is, like, did your bullpen allow runs in important situations versus did your bullpen allow runs in situations where it didn't really matter one way or another, right? And that's kind of what happened in this series. Is the D-backs bullpen was perfect in games where it didn't really change much, right? Like after Zac Gallen's 7-inning 7 scoreless innings, you get 2 clean innings to finish off that game. It's a 9-0 win, right? It doesn't necessarily matter so much in that situation. Those 2 runs scored in the first game of the series were unearned, right? Because of the Nick Ahmed error. Although I think there was a 2-run double there from Trent Grisham that I'm sure Kyle Nelson would like to have back. And the Padres bullpen in that loss, that 9-0 loss, they allowed 7 runs in just a couple of innings of work. So the Padres bullpen was terrible in that situation where it didn't matter much. And then in all the other games where they really needed to lock things down late in games, that's when they excelled. So at the end of the day, timing is everything. And that just didn't really go the D-backs way in this series.
Yeah. I'd love to see a little bit more competitive. And this is, I think Daniel mentioned this in the chat. They've got the most walks hitting wise and pitching wise in the majors, right? But this team is aggressive. And we've talked about this since day one. Like it's a bunch of kids that want to go out there and hit. And I would like to see them start to put a little bit more competitive at bats together later in the game. Like if they're down, right? Like they're swinging at some of the first pitches. Like they can build innings, but like I would love to see them start to put a little bit more of a competitive at bat on a bullpen arm. Like those hater at bats, like I know you want to get on base and you're pushing, but like sometimes he gets erratic, or like Darvish, like he would go down 3-1 on a hitter or whatever. He'd throw a couple pitches in the middle of the zone that they'd take and then they'd chase. Like it just, I would like to see them be a little more selective at the plate, because I think if they can have a few more guys on base, that you're going to start to see a little bit more of a consistent approach.
Yeah, the Padres drew more walks in the series, right? 16-9. And walks have not been great for the D-backs in 2023. They entered today with the lowest walk rate as an offense in baseball and the second highest walk rate as a pitching staff in baseball. which in a lot of ways, Jacob, just has me like, wow, this team is 12-11, even though they're walking a ton of guys and they're basically never drawing any walks themselves. It's honestly impressive. They've managed to have as much success as they have, without that going so well. We did ask Christian Walker yesterday post game about the fact that the D-backs have such a low walk total at this point in the season. Obviously, as a hitter, you're never going to go up there just trying to walk, right? Like if you're going up there trying to walk, that is a losing approach, and you're probably going to strike out. You're not going to walk if that's your mindset. But Christian Walker had some sort of an explanation for why the D-backs as an offense might not be walking much early in the season.
I think when guys are part of an offense that feels like we can score runs at any time, I think you want to be that guy. You want to be the run scorer. You want to spark the inning. You want to, you want to spark the offense. You want to be the guy to, set the tone and get it started. I don't think we're being over aggressive because we're not, we're still producing, right? So it's not quite the whole story of like a low walk. I think if there's other trends that follow the low walk totals, I think there's maybe more to dive into there, but
basically what Christian Walker is saying is like, we're not walking much because our offense is actually good this year, which is not the worst thing in the world, right? I mean, that kind of makes sense. If you're part of an offense that doesn't have much firepower and you feel like when you're down, a few runs that you're kind of behind the eight ball, you just desperately need to get some base runners on there, then you'd be more willing to take walks in those situations. Whereas this year, the D-backs offense has been a lot more deep. There's a lot more depth to this lineup. Mm-hmm. The guys at the bottom of the lineup, like Geraldo Perdomo, have been doing a majority of the damage at times against opposing teams. So you can kind of see where Christian Walker is coming from. I did some digging into the numbers, Jacob, and the D-backs are actually they have one of the lower chase rates in baseball on pitches out of the zone. They have had a lot of called strikes against them. If you're looking for something to kind of pin on, why they're not walking much, they've taken a lot of called strikes. So yeah, it doesn't necessarily paint a picture of them being super over aggressive or chasing all sorts of stuff out of the zone. Like Christian Walker said, they're still doing damage. They're still getting base hits. But at some point you would maybe hope that things would be a little bit more balanced.
Yeah, it also doesn't help that it seems like a lot of the times some of the called strikes that they're getting called on are just outside the zone. The zones seem to be expanding, especially as you've pointed out on Corbin Carroll. Like it's sometimes hard because it's like, man, like they've put themselves in some positions to take some of these walks, and like this team does what it does best when they have runners on the base paths, right? Like they're not a team that's going to beat you with home runs. Like they need to beat you with pressure. They need to beat you with chaos. Like that's just what they do. And so the fact that, that they don't take as many walks, or that they've taken some called strikes, right? Like, or there are some bad called strikes, like it's kind of limiting what they can and can't do. Because if Corbin Carroll, say he, walks 2 or 3 more times, I'd say a walk to Corbin Carroll is essentially a double. Like it's hard to say that it wouldn't be, like, just because he's so fast and seems to be a phenomenal base stealer, because base stealing is not all speed, right? You have to have a good jump. You have to do whatever it is. And he seems to have that, right? He seems to have that in his game. And so you would like for them to take a few more walks. Just, like I know Christian Walker said that, he's a part of a team that finally has some firepower. And we've seen them, like their offense looks great, but have a few guys take a walk. Like it still puts the same amount of pressure on, right? Like, yeah, I think in that situation that Jake McCarthy was up with the bases loaded, right? Like that to me was one of the most pivotal moments of the game. And he worked himself into a full count and got called out on a strike that was borderline questionable. Like that screwball at the top of the zone was it. I can understand why he, like he was looking for a walk. And now if you take that into account, right, the next time he's up at the plate, if he's in a 3-2 count, he's got the bases loaded, he's going to remember the fact that he probably just got rung up. So it does play kind of a factor in their minds. And so I can understand a little bit why they want to swing the bat a little bit more and they're not taking as many walks. But I would like to see that going forward. Like, that's just something that I think that, like, hits are great. And if you can get a bunch of them, that's just phenomenal. But if you can start taking walks and this team can find another way onto the base paths, that's just another weapon that they have in their arsenal.
Yeah, the D-backs are near the top of the league at this point in team batting average, but they're near the bottom in on base percentage, and it makes sense, right? They are, getting their fair share of base hits. They certainly did in this series, but yeah, when you're only drawing about 2 walks a game, which is basically what they've done so far this season, you're not getting nearly as many of those extra base runners as other teams are. I'm not that concerned about it, honestly, on the offensive side. I still think that if you look at just who a lot of these hitters have been in the past, a lot of the D-backs hitters are guys who have generally drawn their fair share of walks in past years. Josh Rojas comes to mind in particular. He's always been a guy with an above average walk rate. Geraldo Perdomo generally has a really good approach. He draws his fair share of walks. I do think Gabby Moreno and Lourdes Gurriel Jr., 2 of the newcomers, they're a little bit more on the free swinging side. So that might not be something that changes much, but there are still guys in this lineup that are going to draw their fair share of walks eventually. And early in the season, that just hasn't happened. What is maybe a little more concerning is on the pitching side, specifically for Merrill Kelly, who in that start last night, it just didn't look good. It did not look like the Merrill Kelly that we're used to seeing over the last few years. He had 5 walks in the game. He walked the last 2 batters he faced before being removed from the game, which is something that we've seen a few times from him this season, where the wheels just kind of come off at the end of his starts. It's weird, Jacob. It's not like Merrill Kelly is one of the things he's been best at through the last few years is he doesn't really walk guys. Like, his command is good. That's kind of been the best thing that he's had going for him. This year, opposing hitters aren't really doing much damage on his pitches when they're in the zone, but they're walking so much that they're still putting a lot of pressure on him on the mound.
Yeah, the 4 walks in each of his starts is concerning, right? Like, that's, like you said, that's not the Merrill that we're used to, right? The Merrill that we're used to is just consistent. Like, he's kind of like Zach, right? He's not going to blow you away with his fastball, but he can locate, and that's the name of the game, right? So, like, he needs to figure that out, because this team really needs to rely on him being that steady number 2 starter, because you're guaranteed to get a pretty good outing out of Zach every single week, and you need to almost be guaranteed that you're going to get a pretty good starting out of Merrill Kelly each week. Like, he's shown that he's capable of being a really good starting pitcher in this league, and I'm hesitate to say that this has to do with the World Baseball Classic, but, like, he didn't get stretched out the same as the other guys, right? Like,
Sure.
didn't throw as many pitches this spring. So I'm not too worried about it. Like, if we get through another 2 or 3 starts of his and he's still not locating, then maybe I'm going to start to kind of raise my eyebrow and wonder what's going on. But right now, people aren't doing damage on him, and he's kind of just inflicting this upon himself. Like, I trust it. If people show you who they are, and Merrill Kelly has showed you that he's a strike thrower year in and year out while he's been with the Arizona Diamondbacks, like, you have a tendency to believe them. And, like, I believe that Merrill Kelly will be just fine, because he's given me nothing to say that he's not just going to revert back to the Merrill Kelly of old.
Yeah, it has. You're making a good point, I think, with the World Baseball Classic and just the fact that he had kind of a weird build up to the season. I asked Tori about that post game yesterday. Like, do you think there's still some WBC hangover there? He didn't think so. Merrill also said that he didn't feel fatigued at the end of the start. It at least from his standpoint, that wasn't the reason that he was walking those guys. On some level, that. It's probably the best explanation I can come up with. It's a little hard to believe it at the end of your starts, if you're having a continuous pattern of walking guys right before you get pulled from the game. I think there might be some fatigue there that, maybe he's just not aware of in the moment. But Torrey did say yesterday that he might need to manage Merrill Kelly better. So maybe have a bit of a faster hook later in those starts. That's where a lot of these situations have really ballooned and gone south. Kyle Nelson almost got out of a very difficult situation in that game yesterday, were it not for a Ha-Sung Kim ground ball just sneaking through the infield. Kyle Nelson would have gotten out of a bases loaded no out jam without any damage being done. But yeah, it's not the Merrill Kelly that we're used to seeing. He just basically said he needs to throw more strikes, and he didn't really seem to have any clear answers as to why that's not happening.
Yeah, he's got the stuff, right? Like he's shown it before that he's got stuff to get big league hitters out, and sometimes it's just a matter of trusting it. And
yeah,
I think that like maybe that's just kind of what's going on right now. Like he just needs to trust his stuff. Like he's a big league pitcher. He can get big league hitters out, and sometimes that involves throwing the ball over the plate. And I think that maybe that's kind of affecting Drey a little bit too, where like he's worried too much about making a perfect pitch, right? Like you got to the big leagues by just trusting your stuff. Like, is it going to get hit sometimes? Maybe, but just throw the ball over the plate. Like that's how baseball get. Like you're never going to end a game by throwing all balls.
That's great. That's great wisdom. Hashtag analysis from Jacob, from Father Overlord Jacob. I want to take a minute here to tell you all about our friends over at BetMGM. Damon over here is a BetMGM apologist. He placed all sorts of bets over the weekend on this D-backs Padres series, some of which I'm sure went well. Others not so much.
Perdomo hit was very, very tough one yesterday on that last at bat against Josh Hader, sitting in the right field bleachers, coming off the bat at 100 miles per hour. I mean, I stood up and cheered before it even dropped, and it was pain, all pain.
Yeah,
Damon just taking a walk too.
That's fair. Damon has a tendency to try to spread the word about his bets, and then when he goes down, he likes to take at least 6 or 7 friends down with him. But on the other side, if things go well, then everyone thinks Damon is a god. But anyway, there's all sorts of fun to be had over on the BetMGM app. If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, be sure to use bonus code PHNX when you download the app. There's a few different offers depending on where you live, but for our Arizona audience, you will get up to $100 in bonus bets on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using bonus code PHNX. Place a pregame moneyline wager in the amount of at least $10 on any market at standard odds price. You will receive $10 in bonus bets instantly, regardless of the outcome of your wager. Just make sure you use bonus code PHNX when you sign up. Also, be sure to join us at the BetMGM Sportsbook at State Farm Stadium for all Suns away playoff games. I know there was one of those just yesterday, and seems like everyone's having a great time over there. Our PHNX Suns watch parties presented by Neutral will feature food and drink specials, PHNX giveaways, and PHNX live shows. We had our Suns show out there live after the game yesterday. Join us by grabbing your free ticket in the show notes, and check out the show notes for full offer details. And now listen to Shane talk about the disclaimer.
Disclaimer, 21 plus to wager. Visit BetMGM.com for terms and conditions. U.S. promotional offers not available in Washington, D.C., Mississippi, Nevada, New York, and Ontario. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Colorado, D.C., Illinois, Indiana, Louisiana, Maryland, Mississippi, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, Wyoming. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369, New York. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP, Arizona. 1-800-522-4700, Kansas, Nevada. 1-800-327-5050, Massachusetts. 1-800-BETS-OFF, Iowa. 1-800-270-7117 for confidential help, Michigan.
So while you're here with us, be sure to like this video, because that is where me and Jacob get all of our self-esteem. It's because you like the video. So we always appreciate that. If you haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe to our PHNX Sports YouTube channel right here if you're watching. And also you can be sure to subscribe as well on any audio podcast app. The Apple Podcast app, Spotify, all those good things. We would always appreciate you subscribing, leaving a 5-star review, all of those wonderful things. They really help us out a lot. Also, be sure to become a PHNX diehard if you have not already. You'll get access to my full count newsletter every week. By doing that, you'll also get access to newsletters from all of our crew of writers here at PHNX. Craig Morgan covering the Coyotes, Gerald Bourguet with the Suns, Howard Balzer with the Cardinals. We've got a lot of great content over there. Some of it is for free, but only the diehards get the really good stuff that we have to offer over there. So be sure to become a PHNX diehard if you have not already. We also are now just 2 days away from our first takeover of the season. We will be out at the Diamondbacks game this Tuesday. Of course, I'm always out there, but Derek will be out at the game as well. We would love to hang out with you guys before and during this game. As you can see here, we have a takeover season pass that includes 6 PHNX D-backs takeover tickets. We have one every month, pregame meetup access, and also this very classy It's Always Sunny shirt that you can see on your screen that is only available to people who purchase the season pass. If you want to go game by game instead, you can also do that. As I said, our first one of the season is just 2 days away on Tuesday against the Kansas City Royals. You can use the Eventbrite link, which should be in the description, as well as Discord and Twitter and all of those places, in order to buy your tickets if you want to get the season pass or just buy it for that one game. We should have a lot of fun on Tuesday. We would love to see you out there for sure. We've got some probable starters here, Jacob. At least we mostly have probable starters for this series against the Kansas City Royals. No starter for the Royals yet on Wednesday. I know someone asked in the chat earlier if we will see Zac Greinke in this series, which as of right now, it does not look like we will. The D-backs will face Brad Keller in the opener of this series against Tommy Henry, who, of course, is making his season debut for the D-backs. Game 2, it's Brady Singer against Ryan Nelson. And then in that finale, it's Zac Gallen against a to-be-announced starter here for the Kansas City Royals. Jacob, as we talked about before, the Kansas City Royals are not nearly the quality of baseball team that the Diamondbacks have been playing of late.
Great, Bob.
Not great. They have not started the season well at all whatsoever. Their offense outside of Bobby Witt Jr. is just not a whole lot going on over there. So this is a team that you feel like you got a good chance to win a series here, and we'll see if the Diamondbacks are able to do just that. But I think it really comes down to what you talked about earlier, Jacob, which is not playing down to the competition, right? You still have to have respect for a major league team and come out and still try to play the very best games that you can.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you don't know what to expect from Tommy Henry on day one, but you saw a little bit of Tommy Henry last year, and you hope that maybe he's taken a step forward since then, because he showed flashes of having good stuff last year. So he's kind of along the same lines as what else you've seen coming from the Diamondbacks farm system. He's a locator, right? Like he's going to live or die off the fact of, can I locate this fastball somewhere where it's not going to get hit into the seats, right? Like he's got to find corners because he's just not going to overpower you down the middle. But to feel good about this team, like I want them to take 2 out of 3. Like I think we're at the point with this team where we can just say they need to go in there and take care of business, right? Like it's a professional ball club that's coming, but at the same time, like this D-backs team, you just went 12-11 against really good teams. Like you should go into this series and take care of business. And I don't think there's any way other to say it than that. Like it just, I want to see them put up runs. I want to see the bullpen look good. I want the starting pitching to look good, because we know that they're capable of it. And I think anything less would be kind of a disappointment.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing on the line this week is whether or not Derek has to dye his hair purple, of course. That's yes. What the people really want to know. And as of a few days ago, Jacob, it looked like a near guarantee almost. The D-backs were 11-7 just a few days ago. Now they're 12-11. The D-backs, if you haven't heard, have to finish above 500 in the month of April in order for Derek to dye his hair purple when April ends. So the D-backs still need 3 more wins in order to get to that point. So we'll certainly be watching that closely throughout this week. But yeah, on paper, you've got the Kansas City Royals for 3. You've got the Colorado Rockies over the weekend in Denver. That's 6 games that you feel like you should be able to, take 4 games, maybe even more if things go well for the Diamondbacks. I do want to touch quickly on Corbin Carroll. As you said earlier, Jacob, Corbin Carroll, I don't know what the deal is here, but poor Corbin Carroll has had some not great fortunes with the home plate umpires in his Diamondbacks career. I'm not going to be able to talk while we play this video, but you're about to watch a video. It's about 9 seconds long of all of the called third strikes against Corbin Carroll this season. And you will see, if you're joining us on YouTube, that arguably all of these were not actually strikes. It's not great, Jacob. It's not great.
It's unfortunate because Corbin Carroll's a menace on the base path. So like anything that's called a strike where it's not a strike, like it's one step closer to him not being on the bases. So not ideal to have that called against him. Hopefully that fortune kind of turns around because things seem to regress to the means, right? Like you would think, you would at least hope that he's not getting calls like that for the entirety of the season. Like the fact that he's hitting 270 and he has been rung up that many times on pitches that were not necessarily strikes, like it's pretty crazy. Like he's a very talented baseball player, and it seems like he's got a very good eye. He's just had some unfortunate calls not go his way.
Yeah, and a lot of people have talked about how he hasn't really drawn any walks. He is among those D-backs hitters who hasn't drawn many walks this season, although he did have one today. He said a few more in recent days. But yeah, a big part of that is that Corbin Carroll has not had the best of luck with umpires early in the season. I did ask Torey Lovullo about this yesterday, and he said he is aware. He has had a conversation with Corbin about this. Of course, every time, there's a called third strike, the D-backs are going to go back and they're going to look at their data and they're going to see whether it was actually a strike or not. So they are very much aware of what has been happening. And Torey basically said that, he's encouraging. He doesn't think that Corbin has changed his approach or anything at the plate. He's kind of just encouraged Corbin to stay with it and said, good hitters, these things are going to happen to everyone. And it's just something that you have to be able to work through. So some tough luck there for Corbin early in the season. I don't think umpires are testing him. That used to be a thing years ago where, with young players, umpires would maybe be a little bit harsh early on and, just see how the player reacted. Torey said he doesn't really think that's a thing, nor do I really suspect that being a thing either. But nonetheless, it's tough. Some of these have happened in pivotal situations, and, his numbers could be that much better if some of these calls had gone his way.
Yeah, he'll be fine. Like, I don't really know what else to say. Like, if he was Gabby Moreno, he'd have swung at every single one of those pitches because he can just hit anything that's thrown at him, apparently. But yeah, I think he'll be fine. Like, I don't see that. Like, it's one of those things where like a bunch of them have happened, and so it just seems like maybe there's a coincidence. There's not. They're just bad calls, and it happens, and they're not going to continue. Yeah,
and to be fair, I think, and that video is circulating on Twitter as well, so you might have already seen it there. I believe on Bally Sports Arizona, when they have like the little circle that kind of marks the spot that the ball crossed the plate out, if that circle is filled, then at least according to their system, it was a strike. And if you go back and look, 3 of the 7 actually were filled. So according to their system, they do have some of those actually being strikes. I still think just from the eye test that, one of those pitches was like a high breaking ball that maybe caught the top of the zone. You don't normally see umpires call that a strike. So yeah, I still think qualitatively there's been quite a bit of bad luck there. And you really could make a case that literally all 7 of those called third strikes should actually have gone Corbin Carroll's way. And, who knows where his numbers would sit if those things had gone his way. But hopefully you've been able to at least watch these games. And if you haven't, then our friends at Fubo TV can certainly help you out because you can watch not only Diamondbacks games, but all sorts of things over on Fubo TV. You can start watching immediately with a 7-day free trial. Test it out, see if it works for you, see if it has all the channels and everything that you're looking for. And using Fubo TV, you can watch the most Arizona sports for the lowest price. So we have a feeling that you will enjoy what you get from our friends over at Fubo TV. You get 1,000 hours of cloud DVR included at no extra charge, which is a beautiful thing, Jacob, because everyone knows that like 100 hours or whatever they've offered in the past was never going to be enough. People record basically everything at this point. I know I do. So you've got 1,000 hours included for free. You can watch local teams as well while you're traveling, which is another big thing that I've had issues with other programs at different times. So be sure to get down with our friends over at Fubo TV. If you have not already, you can watch your Arizona Diamondbacks on Bally Sports with Fubo. Like I said before, use the link in the description to sign up for 15% off your first month of Fubo Pro. If you're looking to get out to some of these games, as Jacob said earlier, maybe you're one of those people who's part of the problem. Jacob's trying to call people out here. If you're part of the problem of there not being enough Diamondbacks fans out at Chase Field for some of these games, you should use our friends over at Game Time in order to get to some of these games. As I've always talked about, it is a very aesthetically pleasing app. It is a lovely, beautiful thing. And you should absolutely download the Game Time app if you have not already. And the best way to do it is to wait until the last minute, which for procrastinators like me is absolutely the best way to go. Snag tickets without stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code PHNX for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code PHNX for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
I would go to say that you could probably get a couple tickets and still maybe not even pay for them with the $20 off. Like, I just go to the games. They're fun.
That is very possible. Some of these D-backs games, there's a lot of empty seats there, right? And you know what people who have tickets do last minute? They drop the price. They post them on different third-party apps like that. And yeah, like I said, wait till the last minute. You'll be amazed at what you find over on the Game Time app. Jacob, you got anything else? The sky isn't falling, even though the D-backs dropped 3 out of 4 to the Padres.
They're fine. Yeah, no, that's about all I have. Like, people, it's still really early in the season. They just played really good baseball for 23 games. Like, they're fine. I don't really know what else to say at that point.
Yeah, I think it's pretty. I mean, this was not the kind of, get kicked in the mouth like, oh, the Padres just worked us through and through. No, the D-backs scored more runs. The D-backs scored more runs than the Padres in this series, even though some things late in some of these games didn't go their way. And the D-backs certainly are not a perfect baseball team in their own right. We saw some of those things come to the surface in this series. But if Merrill Kelly is able to get things back on track a little bit, if Drey Jameson is able to look a little bit more like he did earlier in the season, and if the D-backs, which they are able to play some teams that are not, playoff juggernauts, then, you feel pretty good about where things are headed moving into the future. Thank you all for being here with us today. We really appreciate your time here on this Sunday afternoon. We know there's always the hype with, when the D-backs win and we do a post-series show. Not quite as much when we go live after kind of a bummer game like this where you kind of knew the outcome a little bit early on. But we appreciate you being here. If you haven't already, be sure, like I said before, to subscribe here on YouTube so you can make sure that you get not only all of our live shows here with our Diamondback show, but also Suns, Coyotes, Cardinals, all the other great stuff that we have going on here. You can also be sure to follow us on Twitter. You can find me at Jesse N. Friedman. You can find Jacob, as you see on your screen, at Jacob_Franklin4. You can find Damon at Damon Dog. That's DAWG. And then, of course, we have our PHNX_D-backs account for everything D-backs. And all roads lead to at PHNX_sports. That's on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Thanks again so much for being with us here this afternoon. We appreciate your time. For Damon, for Jacob, my name is Jesse Friedman. We appreciate you being here. And remember, kids, baseball is fun, but it's so much more fun when you're holding a Zac Gallen bobblehead.